and welcome to Pop of Passion. Join me, Jax Barker, comedian and highly sensitive person, along with a guest every other week as we delve into our deepest passions, from being a plant dad to conquering insecurity with comedy. If you relish the memory of an unexpected late-night conversation with a stranger about their obscure passion, the kind where you have tears in your eyes one second and are doubled over laughing the next, this is the podcast for you. Hello and welcome to Pop of Passion. I'm Jax Barker and I'm so glad you're here. My guest today's mother was childhood best friends with director John Waters and Divine. She has written for Paper Magazine, Playboy, and the Onion's AV Club. She co-hosts the podcast Kardishin'It and the newly launched Patreon exclusive L is for Losers. You may recognize her from Comedy Bang Bang, The Birthday Boys, or the UCB stage. Please welcome Jessica Jardine.
Oh my gosh, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hi. I'm good. Thanks for having me. I hope people get a chance to see that you are wearing a fruit dress, which obviously warms my heart. She is a gorgeous lemon print dress, and I'm getting to see it over Zoom, and it's making me so happy as a lover of all fruit clothes.
You know, I like to dress the part for every guest, and so for Marcy, I wore a flannel because I was like improviser's dream. But then I also wore a Kardashian collection with a K from Sears jacket that I've had since high school. You know, like and I know no one will see this unless I like take a photo.
No, but that's why I was like, I have to shout it out because whether it was in my honor or not, it is acknowledged, it's seen, it's a beautiful springy lemon print, making me very happy.
Well, it was absolutely in your honor because I know you like fruit, but I was like, you're also a huge Beyonce fan. And I'm also a huge Beyonce fan. So I was like, lemons, perfect.
2-in-1, an absolute 2-in-1. Yes, you nailed it. It's Yance, it's fruit, it's all of our favorite. And it was just the 5-year, I think it was the 5-year of lemonade, like last week.
Yeah.
I had one of those like, what? How? But it just happened. It made me feel very old, but I'm grateful that it exists.
I know. That was such an impactful album on so many levels.
Life-changing. That and the self-titled are just,
unreal.
Just turned my whole world upside down.
And you were at Coachella, I believe, or Baychella.
Yeah, I was just telling this story to a friend because, yes, my husband and I went out there to see the second of the 2 weekends, saw her live with my own eyeballs. But it was very funny because it's like something I'll get to tell my grandchildren. I'm like so grateful we did it. But it was hard, and it was like very, very packed, shoulder to shoulder, and it was a whole kind of – because normally Coachella, like I've been many, many times, and it's like people kind of filter out at the end of the night in a steady stream. But since it was Beyonce and it was that like Baychella, everybody waited till she finished, and all left at once. And so it was just this like crush of people, and it was just kind of a horrible exit. Like we were kind of in this – corral of people for hours, and it was like a very kind of like unpleasant end to it. And then when we saw like the Netflix special, I was like, oh my god, we did not need to go. It's so you get like truly so much of the exact same. It's very cool to say I went. I'm glad we did it. Makes me feel like a super fan. But to anyone listening, the Homecoming special is like, you're there, you saw it. Like
the production value is like unparalleled.
Yes, and like you get all the behind the scenes. You get so much closer. It's like I watched it on like the far side stage, like jammed shoulder to shoulder with like a bunch of drunk 19-year-olds. But it was very. I'm like glad I did it, but just moving forward, I was like. I think we live in a time where you can watch stuff at home and it's just as good.
Absolutely. One last question before we get into it. Were you there for the pink or the yellow?
It would have been, it must pink, because I think first weekend
was yellow.
Yeah, so pink.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Special. It was really great.
Well, I feel like I'm on Kardishin'It. I feel like we just caught up. So this is an honor
You're my
for me. Oh
Marcy.
my gosh. That is so sweet. So, Jessica, the question I ask everyone, what is your
Mhm.
passion?
Well, I would say sometimes I can feel like a real master of none when it comes to passions. There's so many insane, stupid things that become very obsessed with. But I would say like a big passion for me has been, and I've been really in it in quarantine, is miniatures, which is actually like a pretty lifelong thing, like which I can tell you about.
Yeah.
But and then that sort of led to also like I got very into like Etsy and finding little makers, and then that led to a lot of just like fruit focused everything like we're talking about. I became
Hmm.
like a really massive collector of like clothes with fruit on them, earrings, jewelry. Like I just got very fixated on like how much looking at like fruit on myself made me, especially I think in like a Zoom era.
Yeah.
How happy it made me. So I just became kind of like like a little collector this year in a way that I haven't really before.
So you've never, like, you didn't have, like, did you have Beanie Babies when you were a
No,
kid?
I didn't
No.
have Beanie Babies. I never really had like a major thing except like so in grade school and like middle school, I did get into not doll houses. That's what's weird. I wasn't into doll houses, but I did get into like miniatures.
Oh,
I
okay.
think where it came from is that in California, um, you do in fourth grade I don't know if you still do, but you do, you really learn your like state history. And in California, the state history is all about the missions,
Hmm.
which are, basically just these like churches that Junipero Serra built all along California. And so you like learn about the missions, and then you do what's called the mission project, and you have to like build a mission. And usually you build it out of like sugar cubes, or for the fancy kids who can go to Michael's, you get like special kits. And it's like a very California kid thing, your mission, and then like which mission you chose. Like is it
Yeah.
mission San Bernardino? Is it mission San Francisco? Like, because they're all up and down the state. But the mission project is sort of like this first, you have to like build it and make like gardens and make a whole kind of little town, basically.
Yeah.
I remember just like getting very, very into it. I'm still into missions, weirdly, not into Catholicism, but I really like missions and I get excited to go visit them.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I think that like unlocked sort of just like an interest in like shrunken down miniature stuff. And so I'm from the Bay Area and over the Santa Cruz. I'm from like kind of the base of the Santa Cruz Mountains, and my mom and I would go on like road trips, day trips over to Carmel, which is this like beautiful town right by
Yeah.
Monterey, and they had this little like kind of miniatures in it. And it used to be like my favorite thing to ask my mom to go do if we could go to the miniature store. And I built like a couple different things, but the one I was most proud of was this little fruit stand, which makes sense now.
Yeah.
But it was like a roadside fruit stand, like a little wooden fruit stand with shelving and little bushels and baskets.
Oh.
And little like for sale signs and stuff. And that was like my pride and joy. And I would just like buy lots of miniature little fruits and veggies and like things that would have been on sale at like a roadside fruit stand. And I had it forever. And I like always remembered it really fondly. But that was just like a phase of my childhood. And then at the start of 2020, like even before the pandemic, I just like got really I started thinking about that collection, and I was like, man, I bet it's a lot easier to get that stuff now. You
Oh,
don't have
for
to go to
sure.
specialty stores. And I had never looked, and I started poking around Etsy, of course.
Yeah.
And it's like the world is your oyster. It was like you could get custom stuff. You could get anything under the sun. And like I really love like food and drink miniatures. And
Yeah.
so I just started buying them, and then suddenly I needed a shelf, and I got a display shelf that I'm looking at,
Wow.
and it just like really spiraled. And I would post it every time I got like a miniature in the mail. And also like all things Etsy, I've learned you get, this is true also when you buy like vintage clothes and stuff online, like you get these like really lovely little handwritten notes, and everything's packaged so sweetly. It just has all this like human touch and thoughtfulness in it.
Yeah.
So I just got really into miniatures this past year. It kind of waned because I went a little nuts. So I haven't added to it in a couple months, but yeah, I'm looking at like I've got little Bloody Marys, little cheese boards, little coffee cups, pies, and then the one I was really excited about, I got a big dim sum set. So the little like bamboo
Yeah.
kind of things with tiny dumplings in them,
That's so
little
cool.
beers, little margaritas. I like little alcohol. I think it's really cute.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, who wouldn't like? I like the big alcohol, but that's
yes,
a
I would
different
say for
story.
myself, I'll need larger, but yeah, that's sort of like where so it was this very obvious like connective thread. I knew where it came from, but I didn't expect to fall into it quite as much. But it's just been so nice. I love it. And I started also social media is such a huge piece of it, and like Instagram totally learned my algorithm and started just like recommending all these little miniature accounts to me. And so then, and they, it's like everything. Suddenly you are
Yeah.
following and following and following and down the rabbit hole. Um, and it's amazing. And there's like, it's such a cool time to be interested in, like, I feel like, and it's kind of the heart of TikTok too, but like to be interested in any niche, whether it's like makeup or skincare or whatever it is, because you can find all these people who are completely devoted to it and put up all these videos about it and like let you
Yeah.
see behind the scenes. And like I find that I will just get lost watching videos of like miniature makers like shaving and gluing, and like it's so cool to see
Yeah.
people make that stuff.
And it's
I love
almost
it.
soothing. I know I don't watch miniature videos, but I watch a lot of cupcake videos, like decorating.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I have no interest in decorating a cupcake. Like, you couldn't pay me. My mom
Yeah.
has like paid to take classes to learn how to decorate cakes. And I'm like, no, that's not for me. But I love to watch the videos.
Well, that's so my my actual job is I oversee Tasty, which is this like food brand run by BuzzFeed. And most people know it as kind of like they call them like hands and pans videos.
Yes,
It's like
I'm
where the hands come
obsessed.
in and cook. Yeah, and so that's like what I do all day is run Tasty, and like I don't cook. I can't cook. I really am a horrible chef. I would absolutely starve if it wasn't for the fact that my husband can cook and feeds us. But I like I am a part of this like massive brand that is, and so much, we do so much research. We have like these massive data teams and like audience surveys, and it's like people, it's about just like the sensory feeling, the soothing feeling. Like there is of course like anything with food content, like a lot of utilitarian searching of busy parents looking for what to cook their kids for dinner that night. But
Hmm.
there is so much just like it's just pleasing for people to watch things, and it just is this time where we like don't have to, there doesn't have to be a larger function to something. It's same as like ASMR, like it's just
Yeah.
like we just like it. We like it because we like it, and that's it. But
I think those are the
yeah.
best passions, or like you just like it because you like it. And that's awesome.
Well, and I feel like it's a time now more than ever. That's why your podcast is a great idea, very savvy, because I feel like the concept of hobbies is almost like blurred, and it is just sort of like we are our interests kind of now. Like
Yeah.
even if it's not what we like pay our rent off of. Like I think life is a lot, especially in the pandemic. Life is so much less compartmentalized, like
Yeah.
everyone, you can see my bar collection behind my head and my dirty dishes in the sink, and like everything is kind of all one. We can't really like put up a lot of barriers between like the different parts of our lives now, or haven't been able to. So I feel like this thing of like, I don't know, like what you're into, it's less of like a private interest for you to explore in your downtime. And it's like, and I started sharing miniatures, and everybody was like, "Yay, we love it. Let's see more." And I was like, "Okay, I
Yeah.
guess this isn't weird. All right."
Yeah. I love
So
the
it's been very nice.
community. Like, the community building around anything is so important. Like, I would say, for instance, people know me for like three things, and that would be Gaga, Gilmore Girls, and gin. No, I'm kidding. Not
The
really.
three G's.
Not really gin, but I trained as an improviser, so I knew I had to give you a third. That was,
I would have
a
come
G.
down real hard on you.
Yeah, I was like, oh, what else is G? Oh, I do like gin.
That's great.
But
I bought it.
yeah, I think it's so. I think especially in when you're in like college and then post college, your interests are your identity.
Yeah.
And I think we're kind of getting back to that in our later years because I think people are starting to, at least I hope, be less judgmental about stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's like in your 20s or teens and 20s, because I was really somebody who like went through a million identities and a million like I'm this girl now. I'm
Yeah.
I'm into raves. Nope, it's hip hop, and a lot of mine were really like music focused because I was a big
Mm-hmm.
music person. And I think that then you get old enough that you're like, oh, that's weird. I don't really need to like scream my taste
Yeah.
out at the world, because a lot of that is about like just how you dress and hairstyles and stuff. But I think then you kind of pendulum swing so far to the other end. And as you get older and you get busier and you have more responsibilities, it just is harder to like honestly have interests and like
Yeah,
nurture them
absolutely.
and have them. It takes time and effort, and let alone if it's something like skill based, like I'm learning a language or music. So it's like I think that that's been a very interesting part of this year, is that I think everybody has had to like fill time in
Mm-hmm.
such a different way, openly having to be like, yeah, we're stuck inside. Like, what do I do? What am I into? What's interesting to me? And some of it's stuck and some of it hasn't. But I do think that it's like this more mature version of saying like, okay, I don't need to have like jet black hair, emo aesthetic. But it is nice to share with people in my life, like the stuff that
Yeah.
I like. And it's especially like one of my very favorite things is when people I know, like friends or even just listeners of the podcast, like tag me in like fruit shit or like miniatures. And like it like honestly always really warms my heart. Like, oh my God, people know that I like this. That's so
Yeah.
nice.
Because at like the like deepest level, it's like you're being seen.
Yes, it's exactly that. And it's like for things that like, like there's definitely, it's not the greatest risk of putting yourself out there, but I remember I had the same thing when I like was dyeing my hair all the different, different crazy colors or like,
Mm-hmm.
especially as you get towards your late 30s, it's like very easy, I think, especially for women to just judge yourself and assume that people will, read into it or like, ooh, what's going on with her? Like
Yeah.
it's especially I don't have kids, and like it's like the parts that these are like benign interests, but in the world of social media and the moment we're in, and as like a woman moving through her 30s, you can do a lot of like kind of mean anticipatory like self-talk, where it's just
Yeah.
like, oh my God, am I really going to be this lady who's like dyeing her hair a million colors and like collects miniatures? And then you put it out there and everybody's like, yay, we love it. And you're like, okay, it's not about other people validating you, but it is a nice reminder that like sometimes if it is just you in your head, you can make it a lot more complex and frankly a lot more negative than it is. People are like, oh, I didn't know about that. That's fun. Cool.
Yeah,
And it's very,
totally. It is so
yeah.
cool when you like have a passion that people are aware of, and then they'll like text you like, um, like when Gaga did the Super Bowl, like I probably got like 40 texts. And I'm
Oh,
sure you get it with Kardashians all the time,
oh,
but like it gets to a point where it's like, yeah, like I have other interests and like I'm doing my thing and like I'm not a little monster like for life. Like I am, but I'm not like I'm more than that, you know what I mean? So it's a fun like line where it's like how into something can you be?
yeah. I think that becomes that's where fandom is so fascinating to me because it's like, and yeah, and when you've sort of like I definitely am a person who is always screaming my interests out to the
Mhm.
world. But then when you do kind of hit a tipping point, like I remember even a couple years ago, I was like pineapple. It's only pineapple. Like it was like
Yeah.
predating my current, and I was like pineapple, pineapple, pineapple. I love it. I love it. And then it was like that thing where it was like, bless her heart, my mother-in-law is sending me like for 4 years straight, like pineapple cups, pineapple, like where I just was like, if I see another
Yeah.
pineapple, I'm gonna lose my mind. And it's so sweet, but it's like I'm the one who shouted it out to the world. I'm the one, and you forget that like everyone's busy, and people who love you are so grateful when they can think of something you like,
Yeah.
when they're like, oh, she loves Gaga, great, slam dunk. And that
Yep.
like you've kind of given everyone like you've eased up the homework piece of like
Yeah.
and it only roots from the very best place. Like it only roots from people trying to like let you know that they're thinking of you. But it is very funny. Like once you sort of are like, yeah, but there's other stuff too. Like,
Right?
so I'm curious as a Gaga fan where your fandom exists.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about Gaga the actress? Like how do you feel about this Gucci movie and such?
If it impacts my VIP tickets to the Chromatica Ball, I will throw a fit. But if it helps her get to the EGOT, do you say EGOT or EGOT? EGOT.
I say EGOT, but yeah, I'm sure either way.
If it helps her get there, I will, let it slide. But I'm going to that concert. I spent like so much money and I'm going alone. Like
I would
it's
go with you
Wrigley
if I could.
Field. I'm pumped.
That is one of the ones that's like when I think of, and I am by no means, I would not put myself in the category of like a diehard Gaga fan, but I do adore her. And that has been so many times like that album has been and people have made a million memes about it. Like
Mm-hmm.
the visual of just getting to dance to that is
Yep.
so like the ticker tape parade end of COVID. Like,
Absolutely. Like, I don't think I'll ever feel like we're out of COVID, even in 50 years. I think I'm still going to be scared. But
oh yeah.
the moment, like, I want to go to a wedding. I don't even care if I like the person. I don't care if I have to pay to fly. Like, I will buy a bridesmaid dress. I'm there. If they,
Well, here's what's crazy. To a couple that I know in the UCB community had to postpone their wedding from like last fall, right? Like peak
Mhm.
COVID. And they wanted it out in Palm Springs. I'm not super good friends with them, but I have a lot of friends who are, and I know them just like through the theater. But they had to cancel their wedding and they wanted it in Palm Springs. Palm Springs is weird because kind of once you hit the summer, it has to cut off because it gets too hot.
yeah.
So they were offered May 8th. And I remember my friend telling me about it literally just in March being like, yeah, the wedding's in Palm Springs. It's in May. And I was like, oh, reckless. Like, how dare they,
Mhm.
And which once you've had a wedding too, you can't really like come down on anybody once you got to have the party. Like it's, so, but I was like, that's crazy. That is so reckless. I can't believe they're going to have a wedding. Everyone had to elope or cancel their weddings. And the timing is nuts. Everyone's vaccinated. Like by the time this wedding happens now,
Yeah.
everyone I know that's going is totally vaccinated. And it is like the craziest roll of the dice that it just happened that way. And
I
so like,
know.
I'm so jealous. I have friends that are all going to like see each other and
Yeah,
hug
and
and be at a
dance.
wedding together and dance and get drunk. And I'm like, I would go in a heartbeat if I was invited, but I
Mhm.
also like the idea, I'm fascinated by it because the idea of just like dropping out of like a year plus of COVID straight into a wedding
Yeah.
is so wild. Like seeing a bunch of people at once in person. It's an emotional event. You're in Palm Springs.
Right.
So I'm just going to be like watching on Instagram and texting,
Yeah.
but I couldn't believe that it worked out. I was like, even in March, I was like, that's reckless. She shouldn't do that. And now I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, you win. That's amazing. That's going to be
Yeah.
a really fun ass time.
Well, I am not one to ever compliment Joe Biden. If you've ever seen me do stand up, I did vote for him. I wore a necklace that said vote for about 6 months. Like, I'm not saying, you know what I mean? I'm on the right
Yeah,
side of history.
yeah.
He's not my favorite person, but he did it right, like, with all the help he had. So I'll give
Yes.
him this one.
Kudos.
You
You
know?
did it, Joe. We did it, Joe.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yes, I'm always curious, especially when people have other like pop stars that they are like, because like I'm such a Beyonce freak and I've
Mhm.
telegraphed it to the universe. But there's a lot of nuance to it. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
always feel like if I could have a whole podcast dedicated to like what I like and don't like about Beyonce.
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
the answer is
absolutely.
the headline is everything, but then it's like, well, when she acts, like
Yeah.
her directing style isn't. Well, it's not that it's not for me.
Mhm.
And it's like but anyone who knows you is just like, it's your person. And you're like,
I
well, yeah,
know. Yeah, but
obviously.
there are these, like, you have all these layers to anything.
As anyone would, like my husband's a huge Bruce Springsteen fan, and it's
Mm.
like, which we always joke. It's like we both have the two like broadest, most populist artists on planet Earth.
Yeah.
Like I spent all these years in like music journalism and worked at a record store and thought I was so cool, and then I'm like, we're like, yeah, the musicians everyone alive loves, like the two biggest pop
That's
stars.
so funny.
But we always joke we have really niche taste. We love Bruce, we love Beyonce, we love Hawaii, really weird,
Yeah.
subversive interests. But no, but just that thing where like all of my favorite Bruce albums are the ones that he like can't stand, you know? And to me, I'm
Mhm.
like, that's your guy though. And he's like, not then. But anyways, I got
Yeah.
off of the topic of miniatures and fruit, but
That's okay. I was gonna bring it
okay.
back.
Oh, good.
I'm working on it. I'm practicing. But I was wondering, are there any like miniatures you'd be like, not for me? Like I'm just guessing, like you probably wouldn't want a miniature gun, just based on me listening to you for 500 hours of my life. Um,
I'm not a huge fan of guns. Not a huge fan of like any weapons
yeah.
or altercations or fighting or sports or almost anything that would be defined as like hyper masculine.
I
I think
appreciate
would
that.
be outside the realm. I think I mean a lot of for in the miniature realm, I think anything food is delightful to me. I just like love
Yeah.
it's just really pleasing. I'm not like that's what's so funny. Like I would have a dollhouse if I had space or like, like I like the idea of like doing a whole house.
Mm-hmm.
Um but at the same time, I don't that's what's sort of strange. I don't really feel this need to like build it into a real space. Like I kind of like the idea of just like shelves and shelves of like little foods, like
Yeah.
it doesn't and like little drinks and like I just like it's way more to me about looking at it and being so aware of like what like that hands made it, as
Yes.
opposed to like passing it off as like it's a little whole world, you know? Does that make sense? Like I just
Absolutely.
actually really love being like, "Oh my god, somebody made this and tiny painted it and tiny like like that to me the handcrafted like piece of it, and that's why I got really into clay earrings too. I had to take them off for the headphones, but like I fell down the rabbit hole of the world of like
Yeah.
clay earrings
Like
because
handmade.
yeah, there's just something so cool about like knowing, and especially again, it's such a cool time with social media. Like I follow all these like miniature artists and like clay earring girls, women.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll like you tag them, buy them, you tag them, and then they will respond to you
Yeah.
like I love your stuff, and they're like, thank you so much for buying it. There's so much connection and appreciation, and I just that's been I think the greater piece of of like COVID and quarantine for me is I wasn't as much of like an online shopper or a person who spent a
Right.
lot of time on sites, and like I had to get really comfortable because I love vintage shopping and buying shit, and I just like got really into these little worlds, and they all like follow each other and will support each other, and like
Yeah.
I find it really charming. I don't know.
No, I get it. Like, not to bring it back to me, but I
Please.
that will I'm dating this episode won't come out for like weeks, but uh Candy Muse on Drag Race just came in second place last
Yes.
Friday. And I've known Candy Muse through mutual friends since I was in college in New York. Like, even as a freshman, I was aware of Candy Muse because Candy Muse is a huge little monster.
Oh, of course.
And it's just like, it's so cool, these communities. And then to see someone in that community succeed at such a level is like, you feel like it's you.
Oh my God. It's so exciting. And it's
Yeah.
like I've gotten little tastes of it through UCB over the years,
Oh,
and
I'm
it is
sure.
just like it's just such a thrill. That's very funny about Candy Muse. I have to tell my friend Dickie because she and her roommate Hannah host like a live IG live tarot reading show on
Oh,
Thursday nights,
cool.
and it's really cute, and they like it's really like set decorated and really really cute, and they do tarot readings for people who pop on, and they're huge Drag Race fans, and so they tagged Candy Muse. They were like, come on and please come on and get a reading, Candy Muse. And at some point they were giving a reading to somebody else, and Candy Muse came on and was chatting in the chat, but they obviously weren't going to just like cut another person's reading
Yeah.
short, and they were like, please stay on, please stay on. And then by the time they finished, Candy Muse had left, and they
Hmm.
were like, no, and like heartbroken that they'd missed it. So now every week they tag Candy Muse to try to get them back. But it's so exciting, and just to watch
Yeah.
somebody become like a darling to so many people, and you're like, oh my God, look at you, look at this community.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, we like the same thing. Like, we have something in common. Like, if I saw you on the street, I would know what to say. And like, so often I'm
Yeah.
like, I know this person so well and I don't know what to say. But then it's a stranger and I'm like, no, I know what to say. It's like, and it's all based in your similar interests or passions.
I think it is just this feeling of like even if it's like a small bridge bill, it's just something. It's just this feeling of like, especially if it feels niche, I think you just suddenly feel this huge connection point, like we have
Yeah.
something huge in common. Wait, so have you always been a Gaga fan, or is it like later career, or what's been
No,
your
like,
journey?
I remember hearing the song Just Dance on the radio for the first time and it like changed my life. I'm saving that story for my memoir. Um,
Oh, good.
but I will drop the title. It's Chasing Clonopin with Coffee. And I've had that name since for 10 years.
It's
Like
worth holding on to. It's really
yeah.
good.
So no one is allowed to see. I have to patent that. I got to get Chris Jenner on the line. How do I make a trademark? Um,
You have to get Sophie to call, or Sophia to call for you, like
yeah, right. Exactly.
Caitlin.
But yeah, no, I'm like an OG fan. Like I had tickets when she was supposed to perform with Kanye. Like, you know what I mean? I have the number of times I've flown home to see her for the 100th show of the Born This Way ball, and then as I'm getting in the taxi, it was canceled. So because she broke her hip.
What? Where's home?
Chicago.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Oh my
Hmm.
God, it was canceled. Oh my God, I remember this.
Yeah,
So, what
but
did you think? Oh, go ahead.
I got a tattoo instead.
Ah, what'd you get?
I have a Trinity on my ring finger.
I thought that was a ring. I fully saw it and
Yeah.
was assuming it was a
Well,
ring from here.
one of my stand up jokes is I tell a whole story about my tattoo story. And I say, well, Beyonce has a Roman numeral 4 on her finger, and a Trinity is, you know, the number 3. So if Beyonce's a 4, I can be a 3. Um, but
I was just sharing that this weekend. Something came up about four. Oh, what was it? Oh, it was because I got a tarot reading on that same
oh,
show.
cool.
Um, and I got something with a 4. And I was like, well, that's very good for me because 4 is very important in the Beyonce verse. It's her tattoo. It's her and Jay's
Yeah.
anniversary. It's her birthday. And I was like rambling on and on about like the importance of 4 and the album title. And I was like, had to catch myself because I was like, oh, you sound like a super fan.
I know. But that's the thing. Like, that is the whole point of what I'm trying to do here on the show is like, I want people to talk about the thing that they're so excited to talk about that you're like, oh, I hope this comes up because I'm an expert. And like, when it comes up, you light up inside and like, it's just the best feeling. You know what I mean?
It's the best. It's the very best. I feel like someone who I think because like my parents are really interesting people and live really interesting lives, and I think always nurtured the idea of like, just eccentric interests, like because my mom is from Baltimore, and so like you said in the intro, she grew up with John Waters and Divine as just like neighborhood friends, and
Yeah.
like Divine used to do my mom's hair when they were like in high school, and was just like shy Glenn.
Mm-hmm.
And then when John became a filmmaker, like my mom used to go to the like church basement screenings, and she's gone to every movie premiere of his. They're not like dear, like talk on the phone friends, but they've been, stayed in close touch. And
Yeah.
he's always invited her to every premiere.
Aw.
And that just like influenced so much of like my mom's taste. Like she's so weird, and we had like growing up, it was stuff I didn't know was sort of eccentric or cult or whatever it would be. Like we just had a lot of John Waters like memorabilia and shit from premieres, and like the scratch and sniff like smell-o-vision
Oh,
cards, and like a
wow.
lot of a lot of stuff like that we just always had around the house. And like just really my mom just was always friends with like artists and academics and really interesting people who cultivated their interests, and I
Yeah.
think not in a performative way, but in a way because it like enriched you. And like anyone who's come to my parents' house is crazy. My mom has like an insane amount, like she has this like salt and pepper shaker collection that's like
Okay.
in the thousands that are
Wow.
wild. They're crazy. She has like she's a true collector. She has a lot of like
Mm-hmm.
weird art, lots of stuff. And so I think to me, and like I grew up going to the flea market every weekend with her, and like
Yeah.
just that I just grew up like that. Your house, like my house is full of tchotchkes.
Mm-hmm.
I love seeing my interests like around me. And it's funny, like talking about like the Kardashians, like the hardest thing for me about them is like how fucking sparse their house is, like
Yeah.
all their houses are so like I just learned the term cluttercore, and I was like, oh, that's my aesthetic. Like I just love like stuff and like lots of like plants and little tchotchkes, and like I don't know, it just to me is and something that when people come over, you can be like, yeah, this is this thing I'm really into. Yeah, this is this collection I have. Like the conversation piece, I think part of whether how you dress or how you curate your home, always to me is just like that's the most fulfilling thing to me, is to be able to like have something that people compliment or ask about, and to be able to get to
Yeah.
tell them the story of it. And just like learn more about them in terms of telling them about something that I'm interested in.
Yeah. It's all about connections.
It's all about connection. And even if it's like they don't it's not, even if it's like not for them, like I think it's just, there's something really fascinating about like and I've always felt this way. There's so many voids for me, like I because my dad is from Scotland, um and I didn't grow up with like sports or like football, like I don't
Mm-hmm.
have like a classically American dad, and so sometimes soccer was on, but like I don't have any awareness of like sports, and I have a real void in the concept of like fandom and like what
Yeah.
is very normal for most people. And so that becomes like super fascinating to me, like being super, super, or like Marvel and comic books. Like
Right.
sometimes that's the other thing is like, there, as someone who has so many things that I'm very like passionate and obsessive and love to like, you know, um, stay on top of, I'm also very fascinated by things that are huge and I have zero inroad to,
Yeah.
like I don't want to watch Marvel movies. I don't read any. I've never read them.
Nope.
They just are not for me. And is like an enormous slice of the culture, or video games, Fortnite. Like
Yeah.
just I don't have a way in, but I want to know what that is, because I think the worst thing I think that can happen as you age is you become a little too prideful about what you don't like. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's like very dangerous to be like, and because I'm someone who's always been very drawn to pop culture and a lot of the things that people are, like can be very dismissive of, like Kardashians, I have to remind myself that like being a snob or deciding whether it is sports or Marvel or all of that, that like I'm above it, I'm better than it just because it's not for me, is a huge mistake. And like a good example of this is like TikTok. Like that's one of those things that's been like obviously so pervasive, pervasive. And like I for sure was like, that's not for me. I'm too old.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. Guess what rules? TikTok
Yeah,
rules.
it's the
It's
best.
so awesome. It's amazing.
Yep.
I truly feel somebody did tweet the other night that was like, how about just getting to go to a place every day as much as you want, where people are being like fun and cool and knowledgeable and creative and so funny. And
Absolutely.
like and it's void of like really like likes and the like, the personal
Yeah.
piece of it. You can just enjoy it. It's just to me like that's so exciting, and that's a place where like individuality and interests are so curated, and it just is such a reminder to not, I think, write off like what isn't for you, because you never know what might end up being for you.
Yeah, you don't know until you hear about it. Like um I was never I okay, well, I've always been obsessed with Stevie Nicks, and I've always been
Mm.
obsessed with the album Rumors. I
Mm.
dated someone who was obsessed with Fleetwood Mac, and now I'm like obsessed with Fleetwood Mac. Like, you know what
Yes.
I mean? And it's like, it's because one night I was like, hey, tell me why you love Fleetwood Mac. And it was like a 3 hour conversation. And I was like, wow. Like, and also I was like, I have never been more interested in you as a human, even though we'd been dating for a long time.
Yes.
But like, it's just interesting when people talk about what they love.
Oh,
They're so
it's
captivating.
it's my favorite thing. I think it's been, it's been I think a huge, that's such a good way to put it. And I would say that that's almost like a core tenet of like my personality. And it's why I did journalism for a long time.
Hmm.
I love interviewing people. I like listening to people, and I really like hearing people's interests and stories, and like especially the pieces that diverge from my own, because of exactly what you're saying. When you see someone light up, even if it's not necessarily positive, even if it's an impassioned piece of like, about politics or about something, just like something they're knowledgeable and care about
Yeah.
and can speak to authoritatively, it is the most like humanizing and like, yeah, like attractive thing. I remember I worked at a record store in college, and it would be the best because it was like a full Empire Records thing where, there's the like old crusty punk guy, and then there's like the electronic music girl, and like a
Hmm.
lot of like identities, and everybody would sort of in like rib each other in good fun, and
Yeah.
like have such hard opinions and like but it was all about people who had just did so much like work and wanted to share and talk about it, and like there was nothing like argumentative or confrontational. It was just about people who all agree that this is this like incredible medium that we have all these diverging interests in, and excitedly want to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's my favorite. And also where it doesn't have to be again a space of like snobbery, like my role,
Hmm.
I would always tell people at the record store, was like I knew a lot about music, but because I'm such a huge pop person and always have been, and have always been also like a big top 40, gimme my divas, Britney, everyone,
Yes. Give me
um
more.
give me more.
Hmm.
And so I was always the person, because the record store was like on State Street, the main drag in Santa Barbara. You get a lot of tourists,
Hmm.
and a lot of people that aren't like, hipster record store people, and people come in and they're really nervous, and they're like,
Yeah.
um, so there's a song. I mean, this is all like pre Shazam, pre the way you like can find music now. But it was like, people would always like come up and be like, and always come to me and be like, if they were embarrassed, and it'd be like,
Yeah.
I heard this song on the radio, and it becomes a very funny thing you get used to, where people, you'd be like, okay, what's the song? And they'd be like, well, it's like, and they like sing it really quietly under your breath. They'd be like, I can't hear you, but I really want to find you the song. And a lot of times it would be like a major pop song, but
Yeah.
that like you could tell they walked into this like painted black hipster record store, and they were like, I'm lame. And it always made me feel so good to get to be somebody who was like, I got you. I know this song. Let me take you over to the top 40 section. This rules. Let me validate and make you feel like it is totally okay to like what you like. There's no such
Yeah.
thing as guilty pleasures. Is just
Oh,
like,
yeah. I hate that.
no, we're not doing that.
Well, you know what I think is, I think you'll know this reference, and people who don't know what I'm talking about, you can look it up. There was an episode of Watch What Happens Live with someone you may be familiar with. I don't know if you've heard of her, Oprah. No, I'm kidding. I know you know all about Oprah. And she said to Andy, "You carry the light," and I see that in you because no one knows this, but you were the first person I reached out to be on the podcast, even though
Oh,
I don't know you. Like I listen to you all the time, but like, I don't know. I just had this sense. I was like, I think she might do it because you're like very approachable. And I
Oh,
think that's
that
a
makes me
great
feel so
quality
good.
because
That's really nice.
so many, I think a lot of women get a bad rap for like resting bitch face, but it's like that's a protection layer.
Yeah.
And I think it's a testament to you that you don't have that really, at least in my
I
experience.
I wouldn't be able to pull it off.
No.
I've never been in it. I've never been able to even when I've wanted to or needed to, like have a
Yeah.
bit of a tougher veneer. But no, it's not. It's never really served me. I get very tired by like toughness
Yeah.
and coolness and like the feeling of sort of like unapproachability and also I think because like I spent a lot of my 20s and 30s like interviewing and interacting with people who were in my a lot of times heroes and much cooler than me and doing really amazing things. And you just learn that like people don't really have to be that way. It is a
Yeah.
protection, and it is that you don't have to be like a huge phony, but there's a way to like connect with people and also be thoughtful and guarded. And you can dance, you can do the dance, and it doesn't have to like being intimidating to me has just never been like it's just never been for me. I don't get a lot out of it. And I'm not drawn to people who are,
Yeah.
so thank you. That's so nice. That's really, really nice. And that makes me feel good. And I just like, I mean, you'll see with your podcast, it's like it's just something Marcy and Trish at the time, the three of us just like were people, three best friends who texted a lot about Kardashians. And like, while we didn't have not built by any means the world's biggest podcast, it's been this beautiful thing. It has given me
Yeah.
so much. And like, I can't believe the kind things that people say. Also the tough things that people say.
Mm.
I've had to, I've grown a lot because of it. We've had to figure out how to talk about like really tough topics. Especially in light of like politics and what's
Right.
going on in our country. And like, I feel so grateful for like the fact that just by kind of like on a lark because we were confident enough. I mean, Trisha just joined us 6 weeks after having her baby, which is
I know. Wow.
insanity. And I think it is just one of these things that has like opened so many doors, not even like huge professional opportunities, but in terms of connection with people who enjoy the same things or appreciate the way our brains work. And it's been a huge gift. And so yeah, when I got your email, I was like, absolutely. It's such a fun feeling to see somebody at like the start of a journey, and know how much you'll get out of it, and how much people will get out of it, because it's such a special medium. I always learn, and I know this for myself. It's so intimate, you're with
Mm-hmm.
people in their ears, literally in their heads while they like ride the subway, live
Yeah.
their lives, like. And so there is this like intimacy that that just kind of can't be replicated by almost any other medium. You really are with people in this like really internal space. And so yeah, we've just been so lucky. We have like the loveliest people who listen to us, just fart around every week. So thank you. Thank
Well,
you for listening.
of course, it's truly a pleasure, and I can't wait for the Patreon. Like, I'm ready to sign up for the highest tier. I'm ready. So
Yay.
I want to say thank you for letting me live my passion because I love having these conversations. I do have a fun, quick question. I have a
Okay.
different one for every guest. They're pop ponderings.
Ooh,
So it's
I
just a
love
quick,
it.
fun question with the word pop in it.
Okay.
And you got this one because I know you're a great advocate for reproductive rights,
Yes, ma'am.
as we all should be.
Yes.
So progesterone only pill is a contraceptive, other known as POP. What flavor would you make birth control if you got to decide the flavor? You
Oh my
can't say
God.
pineapple.
I won't say pineapple.
No, I'm kidding. You can say whatever you want.
No, honestly, oh my God, what would it be? This is gonna gross people out.
I can't
I
wait.
feel like I would truly pick like coconut.
No, I love coconut. That's a
Okay.
great answer.
People have like a big aversion to coconut flavor because
Hmm.
it can smell so much like suntan oil because
Yeah.
like that's coconut. But
Mm-hmm.
to me, that's like exactly what I like. I mean, I'm too pale. I'd never use suntan oil, but so I don't have that connection point. But people like really have such a weird thing with coconut, and it's like one of my favorite flavors and smells. It's so just like
Yep.
summer and Hawaii and like all of it. So I would love to make it tropical. It's a little quick trip to Hawaii every time you're popping your birth control. Why not? Let's go full cocoa.
I love that
That's my
answer.
vote.
So we're going to go to the last portion of the show, and we're going to do
Okay.
our passion plugs.
Okay.
I'll go first. I will let you finish this out. So my passion plug today is in honor of my good friend Lily, who is always there to support me. She's one of the only people who's awake in the early hours of the morning to respond supportively to my text that can only be described as manic. So, on that note, NOCC is the National Ovarian Cancer Coalition. Ovarian cancer runs in Lily's family, and she has unfortunately lost loved ones from it. Most do not find out they have ovarian cancer until it's too late, and early detection is key. Please go to ovarian.org to find out more and get involved and donate if you're able. You can find the link in the show notes.
Oh, that's so sweet. I have the same thing. I'm like an early riser, and I will like luck. That's I think sometimes like so much of the core of me, Marcy and Trisha's friendship is we're all early birds.
Love
So,
it. Yep.
because I have coffee and I get jacked, and then I'm watching the Today Show and I'm like crying at something Hoda said, and I'm like I
Yeah.
got a text, and my husband doesn't wake up till later. So I fully relate.
Awesome.
Okay, so do I give my plug?
Yes, please.
Okay, so mine's a little two-pronged. I'm going to be sneaky because
Good.
I think the organization that I would plug, as I always plug, is Planned Parenthood,
Mm-hmm.
always. And by default, also Yellow Fund is an amazing
Yep.
organization for reproductive rights. And yeah, that's something I talked about a lot on the podcast. It's a really important cause to me. And I've had fundraiser shows at UCB over the years. My mom, speaking of my mom being an interesting woman, she was a like what they call an escort when I growing up.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's the women who help the women into the clinic, and
Yeah.
you're basically a bodyguard.
Yep.
And so I just come from a long line of like Planned Parenthood devotees. I think it is an incredible organization, not just obviously for abortion and reproductive needs, but a whole host of other health needs. They're incredible. I would give them all of my money if I could. But I would say, and I've shared this on the podcast, a thing that has become, slightly off of that has become like really huge in my own life is awareness of HPV and cervical cancer, which was something that really upended my life this last year. I don't have cervical cancer, but I had like a really gnarly cancer scare and had to get a bunch of just like really shitty biopsies. I had to get a procedure on my cervix. That means I have to wait a year for pregnancy if I would want to do that. It has had some like major repercussions, and it all roots to HPV, which is so common.
Yeah.
So common. I used to truly always joke like welcome, when someone finds out, it's like, yes, welcome, we've all been here, we're all sitting over here with HPV. There is no shame. It is so common, but it does create the higher risk of abnormal pap smears, which is what I get. Not everyone gets that. There's a million strains of HPV, and for me, I happen to have one that produces like every time I get a pap, I basically get an abnormal, and I have to go get a colposcopy, which is like a chunk taken out, and it just sucks. And like
Yeah.
it's painful. It's like there are way worse things in this world, but like it's just not something that I ever heard a lot of conversation in terms of. It was almost like the pendulum swing in terms of like destigmatizing HPV, which is so important. Also made it so that like I didn't have awareness of a lot of the really serious side effects of it, and it's now impacted like my journey to having a family and things like that. So I like to talk about it because just try to avoid getting it if you can. Get Gardasil.
Yep.
Nothing is foolproof. A lot when I talked about it on the show, other like nurses and health people, reached out and were like, remind people it's not foolproof, which it's not. But like, do what you can if you and educate yourself, because I just would love for one less person to have to go get like really annoying painful chunks taken out of their cervix, and that sucks. So let me be the lesson and just take care of that beautiful healthy cervix.
It's funny you say one less person, because after I listened to that episode, I did have one of my friends listen, and she got her Gardasil at 28. So
oh my God. Well, that was so, and that was what was really interesting, is that it's considered, which we talked about, but it's like that I went down the rabbit hole on it, and it really was considered this kind of failure in marketing, because it is this incredible vaccine, but it really got marketed as sort of like this, almost like with this slut shamey vibe, and also a misinformation that you could age out of it, which was what happened to me.
Yeah.
I thought I was too old to get it at a certain point. I wasn't. And so I'm so happy to hear that. And it is, yes, go get that vaccine. Who cares?
Yeah.
And that makes me very happy.
Well, it's like hilarious, because she's my least Kardashian friend, and her dad went to college with Caitlyn. Yeah, so
wow.
Lots of connections.
Maybe the future governor of my state.
Oh gosh, I hope not.
No, we know. Knock on wood.
Yeah.
But yes, that's my plug. Take care of your reproductive organs, your body. Go to Planned Parenthood, give them some money, and I would say the last thing I'd say about Planned Parenthood is donate to your local Planned Parenthood.
Yes, that's important.
I mean, it's always great to the general Planned Parenthood of America, but I would say always just try and give donations directly, because they have really different needs, and it will just go directly into your community. Which is so important. So, and there's so many organizations, NARAL, I never know how to say it, NARAL, a million of them. But yeah, that's all the stuff I'm all about.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk about it. That makes me happy.
Well, I think passion plugs go with our passions. You know what I mean? Because we need to have something to stand on. If we don't support these communities, we won't be sitting here talking on a podcast. So the earth will burn.
I couldn't agree more. If I had not had I'm very fortunate to have had the privilege and care and access to even complain about having, cervical bullshit. I get to go to, look, this is the full circle. Where my biopsies and all my shit takes place, my OB is at Cedars-Sinai. Why do I go to Cedars-Sinai? It's where Beyonce gave birth to all of her children.
Yep.
And it is so important to me that my OB/GYN, and if I ever have children, where they are born is in the same hospital as Beyonce. And that
Absolutely.
is a deciding totem of my life. So that's all I'm saying, is you can still figure it out within your passions.
Yes.
It's all doable.
Well, thank you, Jessica.
Thank you. This was a blast. What a fun idea for a podcast. I wish you the best, and thank you for having me. It was such a thrill.
So thank you all for listening to Pop of Passion, produced by Christine Ferreira. Please follow the show on social media at Pop of Passion and at popofpassionpodcast.com. I'm Jax Barker. Go out and be the light, living your passion.